I'd like to start with a question. How many people in the room are open-minded? Could I see a show of hands? Raise your hands. Almost everybody, not everybody, and I love that, the fact that somebody didn't raise their hand. They're like, not particularly open-minded. You know, that kind of self-awareness would crush my soul, but I'm delighted that somebody thinks that. So my second question, when was the last time you changed your mind about something that was kind of important to you, something core to your values? Last month? Last year? Can you think of a single time when you have changed your mind about something super important? For many of us, it's really hard to do. And I ask this question because we believe we're open-minded, and we believe the people outside this room aren't particularly open-minded sometimes, but we're not changing our minds. There was a time when we were growing up that we would run home and we would tell our parents about something new that we had learned that had completely changed our world. We're delighted and excited to learn something new. But we reach a point in our lives where we're more excited about having changed somebody else's mind than having changed our own. Somehow we have won when we've changed our minds instead of we have won when we've learned something new. So that's my first point. I want to talk a little bit about demographics, and I want to talk a little bit about resilience. So I alluded to some of the demographic trends that I think are really important to everybody in this room this morning, but just to reiterate. So we're going from 8 billion people today to 9.5 billion people by 2050. 100% of that population growth is because of people living longer. It's about better health and nutrition. It's not because we're having more kids. In fact, we have already reached peak child. The number of children born next year will be less than this year, unless the year after that, the year after that, and the year after that. We already know this. We have 50 years of data that tells us this. So at some point, population growth slows, it stops, and it reverses. The population of Europe in 2100, 10% lower than it is today. The population of China, 50% lower than it is today. There are profound implications about these trends. The population of Africa will be growing. 5 of the top 10 most populous countries on the planet will be in Africa. How many of those are part of your export model today? This will have profound implications. I was talking to the US pork producers last month. I don't think I'll be invited back because I said, what's the biggest market in the world for pork? And they said, China. I said, the population of China is going to be 50% smaller in 2100. What's the plan? There was no plan because nobody's really thought about it. The world won't need more food in the future. You can't make more money by producing more stuff at some point. So we can talk about resilience, but it's inevitable. It's not something that you can negotiate. People sometimes ask me, will consumers pay for sustainability? Well, most consumers won't change what they eat to save their lives. Why do we think they will change what they eat to save the planet? Now, that doesn't mean that sustainability doesn't matter. It just means it's going to come from a different reason. Disruptions to the supply chain are inevitable. Some of that's going to be climate risk, but a lot of it's going to be geopolitical risk. It's going to come in all sorts of different ways, and we know that is inevitable. We just heard about it. That means optimizing systems is not for optimizing for risk because it makes your systems more fragile. It increases risk, it doesn't reduce it. You need to have resilient systems because they will be better able to weather these shocks, and that will ensure the longer-term survival. But it's also just important because the world doesn't need more stuff. They're going to be willing to pay more for better stuff. So I was talking to the soybean growers about 5 years ago, the last time they invited me to come and talk to them. And I said, in 2050, there will be no soybean growers in America, which didn't land well. And he said, you need to be out of the commodity business. You need to be producing high oleic, low linoleic. You need to produce a value-added product so you can make more money every year because you do something more valuable every year. But if you're competing on production and on volume, you're competing with other countries that you're never going to beat. And at some point, the world doesn't need more soybeans. They will need better products. So we need to think about the world in profoundly different ways. We're moving from more to better. For 10,000 years, farmers were asked to do one thing: produce more food. We exist at that one unique moment in all of human history when we're moving from more food to better food. And we will never go back. And that's why this moment is so hard. And that's why it's so polarizing, because the future is very scary because it looks completely different than the past. But we know for a fact that it will happen. And so we should begin to prepare for it. And the countries that prepare for it first will do better than those that are dragged into that future. Because some of those will go out of business because we don't need more stuff. And so the world will be very different. So I moved back to the US last year just in time for fires, floods, and politics in Los Angeles. And the work we're doing at UCLA, it's focused on these issues. The thing I'm most interested in is how do we use language to shift how we talk about food, to reduce polarization in society, to create space for innovations to come forward. Because look, people love innovation almost as much as they despise change. And there is no place they despise change more than in the food they eat. Because food is what brings us together with friends, it brings us together with family, and if you mess with my food, you're messing with my family and people don't like it. But if we don't change how we produce food, everything will change. We need to shift how we talk about things. And so I was working with an international organization last year, and when I evaluated how they talk about things, one of the things that jumped out is that they love to talk about our food system being unfair. And there are a lot of things that are unfair about our food system. There are people who are hungry, there are bad labor practices, poor animal welfare, but when an advocacy group or an activist group tells a group of farmers or food industry people that the system's unfair, they become defensive because they expect the next thing you're going to say is, and it's your fault. So that language creates a barrier to conversation. But instead, I told them, if you were to say, our food system has done some amazing things, but it's left too many people behind. I think most people are thinking, wow, that's unfair. We should do something about that. The words we use can either open dialogue or they can shut it down, and we don't recognize the contribution that we have to that outcome. The professor here at Oxford University, Kartik Ramana, said there are three drivers of this outrage: when people feel their future is threatened, when you feel the system is rigged against you, and when your identity is attacked. In food, we do those things every day. Plant-based say they're going to end animal ag. They threaten their future. Animal ag works with government to create regulatory barriers for plant-based. They feel the system is rigged against them. We're creating the feedback loops that we're responding to. We need to do things differently. We need to understand how people think and how they come to believe what they believe and know what they know so that we can work with them in order to achieve better outcomes. So as I sort of draw to a close, I just want to remind you that people have never cared more nor known less how their food is produced. And that is a challenge because the things they are asking you for may not deliver the outcomes that they want. And in order to better align their demands and their goals, we need to do a better job of communicating with them, but they need to trust us first. And that's what I talked about this morning. And so the thought I want to leave you with is to not just question what others think, but to be open to the idea that maybe what we believe is wrong, and that the thing that we need to do first is to listen and to learn and then to communicate. Thank you.